We're canceling the apocalypse on boring 5e games. This is a review of Pacific Rim, a cinematic adventure. Let's dive in. So here we have the Pacific Rim PDF. Awesome. Sorry, I can't read the back because there really is no back in the PDF version, but this is Pacific Rim, a cinematic adventure compatible with the Everyday Heroes system. Copyright date is 2023 by Evil Genius Games. I really do like how there is a Syrinscape QR code so you can download immersive sound and a movie-like soundtrack to all your adventures. Before we get into the new player options, if you're a bit rusty on your Pacific Rim lore like I am, or you've only seen Pacific Rim Uprising once and don't really remember of that fever dream like me again, or if you've never seen Pacific Rim the Black, then you'll want to check out the introduction, which actually gives a synopsis of the movies and key information about the world. It's very useful for people like me. There are 4 new backgrounds, 8 new professions, and 1 new class. For backgrounds, we have things like the disaster survivor, the exclusion zone resident, the ex-Kaiju worshipper, and the PPDC tradition. Very nice additions to the game overall. Then we have the new professions like the Jaeger technician, the Kaiju harvester, and the Kaiju scientist. We've also got the neural engineer, the PPDC cadet, PPDC officer, PPDC ranger veteran, and the tech scavenger. The new class is actually a rather interesting one. We've got the bonded twins, which is a wise hero. Basically, you're playing as 2 different characters for the purposes of piloting a giant mech that requires 2 people. These smart heroes have a new shared plan called calculated trajectory. Basically, you can use intelligence instead of strength or dexterity for attacks and damage rolls for one type of weapon for 1 minute. In addition, you can apply an effect to your attacks. So we have things like between the cracks, the attack ignores cover and armor. You can bounce it. Liquid dynamics, the attack is resolved as if your weapon had the aquatic property. Not even looking, piercing shot, ricochet. So the attack was resolved as if your weapon had the indirect property. If it is a thrown weapon, it is also resolved as if it had the returning property, and then wind coefficient. So the attack ignores disadvantage from long range. Overall, this is a really good plan for smart heroes that is generic enough to use in just about any situation where a smart hero is going to need to pick up a gun or some other ranged weapon. It fits here because these plans can actually be utilized while piloting a Jaeger. Then there are 2 new feats. So we have neural fortitude, so your Jaeger's maximum bulk is increased by 2 while you pilot it. And then you have drift master. So when you chase the rabbit, you can immediately make a wisdom saving throw to end the effect as if it were the end of your turn. Your co-pilots can assist normally. You have advantage on wisdom insight checks made to assist a co-pilot that is chasing the rabbit. You do not suffer a level of exhaustion the first time you initiate an emergency connection before you finish a long rest. And you have advantage on constitution saving throws made to pilot a Jaeger solo. Not that you're going to be doing that quite often, but I mean, it's there. Because this is Pacific Rim, it only makes sense that the PCs will have access to Jaegers. You get a nice bit of information about the different Jaeger marks, and then are told that it doesn't really matter which era or mark the Jaeger comes from because it gives no benefits. What really matters is the chassis. There are 4 types of chassis. You have light, medium, heavy, and support. Each describes the amount of bulk it can carry, its defense, and armor and speed values. You can customize your Jaeger with different bits of equipment. You'll have to take into account the bulk of the weapons, but also the neural load your PCs will take. The more complex the system is, the greater the mental strain. There's a little bit more emphasis on weapons properties this time around, or rather what kind of damage it deals to Kaiju. Because remember, a Kaiju's blood is toxic, so anything that doesn't cauterize a wound is likely to create a hazard for the environment or any citizens who happen to be around. I mean, not like I would be walking in the middle of the street if I saw a Kaiju there, just saying. There's actually a nice list of weapons to use, both in the melee and the ranged variety, but then you also have things like explosive weapons, and then you've got improvised weapons. Just gotta say, I really dig the names for these improvised weapons, like Object Breakable, Object Unbreakable, Scary Dangerous, Big Ouchie, Enormous Painful, Gigantic Hurtful, and Colossal Agonizing. I mean, whoever wrote that, that's gold right there. There are some new vehicles to use, but these are really just transports for your Jaegers, so there's really nothing special there. Then we've got the new rules. There are a few new rules that you'll have to consider if you're planning on running something in the Pacific Rim universe. The first is the Titan-sized category. Essentially, you have these gigantic monsters and mechs duking it out that will change the scope of any map you may want to use. So each square on a map is supposed to be about 100 feet. Also, if you get hit with an attack from a Titan, you're probably dead. Just saying. Then there's piloting the Jaegers themselves. When you first hook into one with a partner, you'll go through the neural handshake. There are some modifiers depending on how well the characters know each other, but both pilots roll, and depending on the lowest result will determine what the baseline sync quality is. The sync quality is very interesting because it determines if you're using the lowest roll for attacks or the highest roll, as both pilots have to make these rolls. Of course, rolling a natural 1 means you'll be chasing the rabbit or getting stuck in a memory while drifting. Something I really like is the inclusion of system trauma. When a Jaeger is hit by an attack, the pilots can opt to suffer system trauma instead of taking the damage. Because you see, whenever a Jaeger's normally hit, the pilots take the damage as psychic damage, and you split the damage up between the 2 pilots, or 3, however many you have. There's a nice chart for system trauma for each body part on the Jaeger. It should be noted that Kaiju can actually suffer system trauma as well. Crits will not only deal damage to the pilots, by the way, but it'll also have system trauma for the Jaeger. So, really bad if a Kaiju crits you. This part of the video is going to contain spoilers for the adventure presented in this book. So if you're a player who may end up playing this one day, ask your GM's permission and say pretty please before you watch. The Fenris Aura is the adventure for this book, and it follows a traditional 3-act structure. So in the first act, the PCs are testing out a new weapon system with their Jaeger, called the Catalyst. The Catalyst was created by 2 scientists, Dr. Kittle's daughter and Dr. West. So remember that for future reference, by the way. 3 Kaiju emerge, giving the PCs the perfect opportunity to test the new system. During the test, however, they notice that the Kaiju's blood turns red and they go crazy and become stronger. After the battle, the PCs visit the labs to debrief the scientists on what happened, but they are told that everything is under control. Well, actually, one person sort of believes them, and that's Dr. Kittle's daughter. In the second act, the PCs go to the PPDC headquarters in Lima to speak to Dr. West about the frenzied Kaiju, but again, they're told that everything is under control. And then they attend a gala and learn that Dr. Kittle's daughter has been removed from the program. It seems that someone has it out for her because they end up secretly meeting with her, and she has proof that Dr. West is up to something, and they'll have to infiltrate the labs at the headquarters to get it. Also, while at the gala, they unveil a new type of a Jaeger, which makes full use of the Catalyst system. So then the PCs have to infiltrate the lab to get the evidence of Dr. West's wrongdoing, I guess, as well as some blood samples from the Kaiju. And then when they return to base, they are alerted that a new Category 5 Kaiju, as well as 2 other lesser ones, have emerged. The PPDC has already sent the newest Jaeger to deal with it, but things go very badly very quickly when the Kaiju become enraged. The third act confronts the Kaiju, but they have to be more careful because the Catalyst system is what has been enraging them. If they use their weapons too much, it will send the Kaiju into a frenzy. And not only that, they actually have to rescue the pilots from the newly destroyed Jaeger. Once they deal with the Kaiju and make it back to base, the PCs can deliver the evidence that Dr. West knew the Kaiju would end up in a frenzy, leading to his arrest. Overall, I really like this adventure. It has everything you could just about want. Jaeger versus Kaiju battles, some social and some espionage gameplay. Games running in the Pacific Rim universe shouldn't be all about battles with the Kaiju. There's all sorts of things that can happen between humans too. Like a crazy cult that worships the Kaiju and all of that. There are stats for all of the Kaiju. Not just the ones in this specific adventure, but for all of the Pacific Rim properties, which is really cool. Even though you're probably making up your own canon, you can still take what's here and just reskin it for your own purposes. Not only that, you get stats for the main characters from the movies and their Jaegers as well. So if you really want to have Stacker Pentecost cancel the apocalypse with his badassery, you totally can. If you're planning on running this as a short adventure and then move on to something else, there are some pre-generated characters that you can just hand out. And I actually really do dig the names here. Ranger Alpha, Ranger Beta, Ranger Charlie. I mean, they almost sound like they should be in some season of Power Rangers. Quite honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of hope when I heard that Evil Genius Games was making a slew of adventures for different movie franchises. But holy cow, this was actually really good. You can definitely tell that this was somewhat of a passion project based on how much went into the details. Even if it's only clocking in at like 124 pages, there's quite a bit here. It basically transforms the everyday heroes into something a little bit different. If I was going to run Modern 5e, then I would definitely use something from this line with everyday heroes. I chose to read Pacific Rim first because I was really curious to see how they were going to take, the concept of two PCs having to pilot a mech and giant mechs fighting against kaijus and things like that. And I gotta say, it really does fit. The 5th edition is all about making fantasy heroes, fantasy superheroes, and they are essentially action stars in their own fantasy movie. And this was definitely a good fit. I'm kind of starting to see the ingenuity of the everyday hero system. It really is a Michael Bay fun fest, so why not play a game that fits the bill? Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series, and I will see you guys in the next video.